In this lesson, we'll explore two built-in functions, Getattr and Setattr, which allow us to get or set the value of an attribute on an object without using dot syntax. This is often used when we do not know the attribute that we will be writing or reading in advance, as it may be provided by the user or passed by another part of the program or dynamically created on the fly. Let's begin with the Setattr function. The Setattr function creates an attribute on an object. The function accepts the object, then the name of the attribute that you want to create on the object as a string, and then the value to set for that attribute. This function is particularly helpful for dynamically creating attributes. For example, let's say we have a dictionary of dynamically constructed key-value pairs, and we want those pairs to serve as the attributes and their respective values on a new object. So in this lesson, we'll be creating a pizza object. So I'll begin by creating a stats dictionary. And this is going to hold some key value pairs representing some characteristics of a pizza. So for example, I can have a key of name set to a string of barbecue chicken. I can also have a key of price set to a price of $19.99. I can have a key of size set to a string of extra large. That is the only way to go, of course. And I can have a key of ingredients set to a list of strings like chicken, onions, and BBQ sauce. So let's go ahead and define a class called pizza. In its body, I'll declare a dunderInit initialization method, which will take self, and a dictionary, which I'll call stats. And hopefully you're starting to see what it is that I want to do here. I want to eventually be able to instantiate a pizza object, feed in a stats dictionary, and I want these key value pairs to serve as my attributes and their respective values. So I would want a pizza object that's fed this dictionary to have 4 attributes: name, price, size, and ingredients. So how can I make this a reality? Well, of course, we have to iterate over our dictionary, which I can do with a for loop and by invoking the items method on my stats dictionary. And that's going to look like this: for key, comma, value in stats.items. As a reminder, the items method is going to yield each key value pair one at a time. And as a reminder as well, iteration over a dictionary is not guaranteed to be in any order. However, because we're setting attributes on an object, it doesn't have to be in any given order. Now, I need to invoke some kind of function to actually set an attribute on my object. I can't simply do self.key equals value, because what that will do is create a literal attribute of key, K-E-Y, instead of the specific one that I'm iterating over. Key in this case is going to be a dynamic string of name or price or size. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more clever here. So to accomplish this, I'm going to invoke the function we just talked about, Setattr. It's going to be all lowercase, no spaces, no underscores, Setattr. Takes 3 arguments. The first one is the object that we want to write an attribute on. In this case, our object, the pizza that we're creating, is represented by self. The second argument is the attribute that I want to define on this object. And of course, my attribute is going to be whatever key it is that I'm iterating over in my dictionary. And that is represented by the variable key. So whatever key I'm iterating over will become my attribute. And in order for an object to have an attribute, it needs to have a corresponding value. I will make that whatever is the value for the given dictionary key that I am iterating over. And that is it. So below, I can instantiate my pizza and assign it to a sample variable like BBQ. And we're going to see that these 4 keys are now going to exist as 4 attributes on my BBQ pizza object. So for example, I can print out the value of BBQ.size. That attribute has been written with a value of this, as well as, here's another example, bbq.ingredients, and that attribute should be equal to this value right here. On the right-hand side, you're going to see it displayed. There we go. Now let's talk about the complementary function, which is Getattr. Getattr is used to retrieve the value for a given attribute on an object. It accepts 3 arguments: the object, then a string to represent the name of the attribute whose value you want to access, and then the third and final argument is a default value to return if that attribute does not exist on the object. So in other words, the third argument is a fallback value, okay? All 3 arguments are mandatory. So here's what I want to do. let's define a list of strings representing some sample attributes that may or may not exist on my pizza object. So we'll define a string here of price, a string of name. Both of these do exist on my BBQ pizza object, but then I'll define two strings representing attributes that do not exist, like diameter and discounted. So let's iterate over this list with a for loop. So I'll do for each attribute in my list. So I'm going to abbreviate it to ATTR. And here, I want to pass some kind of function that's going to allow us to access the value of a dynamic attribute. Remember, it's going to be represented by my adder keyword right here. So what I'm going to do is print, and let's go ahead and invoke our Getattr built-in function. The first argument will be the object on which we want to access some dynamic attribute. And this will be, of course, our BBQ pizza object. The second argument will be the name of the attribute that we want to get as a string. In this case, of course, it's whatever one we are currently iterating over in the list. So this is going to be ATTR. Finally, the third and final argument, which is mandatory, is a fallback value in case this attribute is not found. So for now, I'll pass in a string of unknown. So what do we expect to see when we execute this? Well, for our first two iterations, these two attributes exist. So we're going to pull out their respective values. So the price right here is $19.99 and the name is BBQ chicken. And then for our final two strings, these do not exist as attributes on my BBQ pizza object. So instead, this function is going to return the third argument, the fallback value of unknown. We're going to see it twice in a row. And there we have our results on the right-hand side. And that's all there is to cover in this lesson. We talked about the complementary Setattr and Getattr built-in functions. Setattr is used to create or set the value of a dynamic attribute on an object, which can come from anywhere. In this case, we created it from the keys of a dictionary. And we also took a look at the Getattr function, which is used to retrieve the value of a dynamic attribute. Both of them are going to take the same first and second arguments, the object that you want to either set or get a value from, and then the second argument is actually going to be the name of the attribute that you want to get or set the value of. To close this lesson off, let's once again head to GitHub, where I want to show you an example of Getattr in action in a library called Scrapey. Scrapey is used to scrape a website, which means to download a web page from the internet and use programming logic to extract information from it. So if you want to, for example, access a sports website to extract statistics for each player and their performance, you can do so with a library like Scrapey. So let's head to GitHub right now. So here we are on GitHub, and I'd like you to focus your attention on this protected instance method called getURIParams. This is a method defined within a class body, and it takes some kind of object named spider, which we don't need to worry about in this example. So here on line 300, the developer is defining a dictionary called params, then iterating over a list returned by the dir function. As a reminder, the dir or directory built-in function returns a list of all of an object's attributes. So we're getting a list of all of the attributes on the spider object. Each attribute name, represented by K here, is added as a dynamic key to the params dictionary. Then the value for that dictionary key is extracted from the equivalent attribute on the spider object with the Getattr function. So this is doing the exact opposite of what we just did in VS Code. In VS Code, we used the key value pairs in a dictionary to form the basis of an object's attributes. In this example, this developer is using an object's attributes and their values as the basis for creating a brand new dictionary, right? So they're iterating over the object's attributes and then using them as the keys and values within their dynamically generated dictionary. And that way, no matter how many attributes this spider object has, it's simply going to pack them all in to this params dictionary. That's what makes this syntax super powerful. Right? And the whole purpose of this, again, is to get you thinking about how you can apply these functions in your code. There's many different applications for Getattr and Setattr whenever you're dealing with dynamic attributes and their values. That's all there is to cover in this lesson, so I will see you in the next one.